Freo de Janeiro with Abid Imam.
G'day, Kaya, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Freo de Janeiro. My name is Abid Imam, and this show is all about engaging conversations with inspirational personalities and public figures to help us understand people, culture, and the world. On this episode, we are joined by Josh Grainger, or Ningaloo Records. He's a prominent vinyl DJ and party starter in Walyalup, Fremantle, and Boorloo, Perth. As someone who enjoys a boogie or 10, I found myself bopping along to his eclectic sets and ability to create fun spaces for underground dance music enjoyment. Josh is an expert vibe creator and curator of sounds. DJs can be very intriguing because they're perched behind the decks. You hear their music, but not from them sometimes, and that chance to get a bigger appreciation for what they're about. So it was really great to get a chance to chat with Ningaloo about his philosophies towards the art form, collaboration, and community. It's an inspiring chat for creatives, and anyone who loves music or record collecting will definitely appreciate this one. Find out more about the show on freodejaneiro.com. Please tell one of your mates about it so we can keep it going, and enjoy this conversation. Josh Grainger.
Hello.
Ningaloo Records.
Abid, how are you?
Mate, very, very excited to have you on Freo de Janeiro. And I must say, for many, many years, I've been on your dance floors, boogieing, shimmying to your beats. I've really appreciated it. Admire what you do as a DJ and how you do it as well, building community in Freo, Walyalup, and around the city. So big congratulations, mate. I love what you do, and so really stoked to be able to talk about it.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate the kind words and appreciate you having spent some time on the D floor. It's it doesn't work if it's just me there by myself. So it's great when people show up and are excited to show up. It's kind of the crux of a dance floor, you know.
Yeah, there are DJs out there who do it by themselves sometimes. I know what that feeling's like. So.
I don't worry. I paid my dues playing empty dance floors. It's there's a lot to be said about it. Actually, it's working with what's in front of you, and reading the room, even if it is empty. That's sometimes the most important read.
It's character building as well, isn't it? It really makes you appreciate it.
I've always liked to look at it like paid practice.
Love it. That's a great way to frame it. And there's going to be listeners who, in the same boat as me, who have been on the dance floor and know you from the amazing stuff you do in the city. So I think for all of us, I'd love to get to know where did you grow up? What were your favourite memories? And just take us back, if we can spin that track backwards to little Josh Grainger, little Ningaloo Records.
I came up in the southern suburbs around Cannington. Not much to be said for that area, but I had a good group of friends, and I lived on the train. I was close to the train station, so I was well connected to the city, and I grew up coming to Fremantle as well. Like a lot of families, it was sort of like the family trip, the closest beach sort of thing. But yeah, I was a BMX punk kid, and skateboarding, BMX. We were running around the suburbs and lots of house parties and friends living nearby, and it was kind of semi-rural growing up, so there was a lot of open land and space in the area. Some nice memories of fields and stuff like this. It was almost, like I said, semi-rural. There's a little bit of historical stuff down by like Mason's Landing and some old sort of colonial housing and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, for me, memories were more made on the train line, I would say.
Nice, and there still are many memories are made on the train line. I've read that your family was quite musical. How did music hit you early on in those years?
My parents were not necessarily musical, but had a vested interest in music. We always had music on in the house. My mum was like a soul, Motown, the English and Irish, I should mention. And my dad was very much 70s rock type stuff, Led Zeppelin through to David Bowie and such. But there was always a lot of music on in the house. It's more my brothers. My older brother, 5 years older, he's somewhat accomplished black and death metal drummer. It was touring the world for several years there, filling in for bands, and then had a recording studio. And my younger brother was a very good pianist, actually. Never really took to the stage much, but we always had at least a drum kit and a piano in the house. I as much as I tried, I think the instrument thing never really took to me, but I was always interested in music and pop culture and genres and what came with it, and collecting music and buying CDs, and so it was musical for me, but not so much instrumental. But it was a music heavily focused house, I would say.
Were you going to gigs locally or checking out some of the international acts coming to town?
I cut my teeth in the local punk scene, which went out. Which I'm talking like underage. We would go to a lot of punk and hardcore shows at the Leadable skate park. They used to have those on a Sunday. We'd get on the train line and get up there and spend the whole afternoon around the skate park, and it was a funny scene at the time, but also very I look back on it fondly. A lot of the older guys who were in the bands, these like rock gods to me, were like very open and up for a chat, and would acknowledge your existence. And that, as a 16-year-old, it was very important. It felt pretty cool. So I have very fond memories of local music in Perth. I still see people around in Perth and Fremantle that I know from that era. And then obviously as I came of age, I think punk led pretty quickly into sort of indie dance, and at the same time I was sort of keeping up my sort of roots of punk with I would visit DeVille's and go see ska bands, shout out the Special Brew, and I was keeping up with sort of rockabilly stuff, and sort of found my feet in dance floors, I think, somewhere between punk and ska, and like I said, was able to put that to indie and eventually electronic music. But I always knew that I liked dancing. It didn't really matter to me the genre. I really got a buzz from being sweaty on the dance floor. This is still underage stuff, but I was always, even at primary school sort of discos and stuff, I was always the first on the dance floor.
That transition then from the sweatiness of the dance floor to being on the other side of the table, how did that come about for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was always identified myself as, and my brothers as well. We had identified ourselves as music guys, we loved music and such. So I always had a pretty epic collection of burnt CDs. This is sort of like LimeWire, Winamp, right? So my brother, again, 5 years older and 4 years younger, so our older brother showed us how to burn CDs and corrupt the family computer with terrible downloads. But
dial-up speed.
Yeah, totally, listening to that dial-up and, leaving the computer overnight to download like one album.
Yeah.
If you woke up in the morning and it was done, it was like, okay, if I burn this CD now, it's going to be ready to take to school. It'd probably take like 35, 40 minutes to burn one album. And I can quickly get it in my Discman, So I was always, I always, when we started going to house parties and stuff, I always had the CD wallet in my backpack. So I was always like, stand aside, guys, I've got the CDs, and that obviously moved into iPods. I was always the iPod guy. And then when I started backpacking, I was very quickly like, don't worry, guys, I'll handle the music. And that sort of transformed into roles in hostels and stuff where they'd be like, have you got your iPod? Can you put music on? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then it sort of started, with beach bars in Southeast Asia and ski chalets and hostels in Europe. I was always the source of music for all these things, so it was a pretty natural transition. I didn't actually start the technical DJing until probably 26 or 27. And by that stage, I knew it was electronic music, and I was kind of finding my exact genres. And I spent a lot of time at festivals and clubs, and I was, very much involved, and I was taking note of songs and track IDs and following DJs. Like, following at that point was still blogs and, specific websites for specific DJs. You had to read up on like festival reviews, or there's old websites that people would try and ID mixes, and even though the mix wasn't even available to listen to, people would still suggest what they thought was in that mix. And so it was a very different way of cataloging music at the time. And then, as soon as I was sort of settled back in Australia, I was straight into buying DJ gear. And, it was quite a quick transition. As I said, it was always happy to provide the music, and then it was just learning the technical ebbs and flows of trying to read dance floors and mix music per se. But I've always been, I wanted to mention, actually, I thought of it today when I thought about things you would ask me. When I used to run party buses. I did like 4 or 5 party buses. I did the first one when I had a fake ID, and I would get all my friends together. I would make these like MySpace collage pictures and send them out to all my MySpace friends, and we'd have these pub crawl party buses, and I used to organise those through the age of like 17 to 21. So again, always had the sort of promoter spirit, trying to promote a good time and soundtrack that good time. So
would you be spinning on the decks during those party buses, or purely?
No, again. So I hadn't touched any DJ equipment at that point, but I'd highly curated the playlist, and even like gone as far as like just sort of editing them in like old like Windows Media Player, where you could just sort of chop them shorter. And in hindsight, it was awful. I just tried to sort of sew together the best bits without any sort of mix or anything. Just chop. Like, between that pub and that pub, we've got 25 minutes, and I really want the bus to be like full party at that point, So, and again, so it was still in burnt CD or iPod territory, or even MP3 player. I think iPod was still a little way out. But there was a very high focus on music curation for these party buses.
And that's a lot more creativity than I thought you would tell me. That's amazing. It's so cool. And I really want to dig into your travels, actually, because being on your dance floors, I love the influence of different cultures, and especially South America. Brazil. This show is called Freo de Janeiro. It's been a big inspiration in my life. But I want to know how your travels around the world and the places you've been has shaped some of your taste in music as well, and what you play now.
Yeah, sure. I did pretty heavily the backpacker trails for a few years. Starting with Southeast Asia, I went down the dive instructor course, and this was in Thailand. So I moved around Southeast Asia for sort of the better part of like 15 months, and did the dive instructor bit, and actually lived with an old like Ibiza head, this older English guy, and he put me on to a lot of lounge and chill stuff, like Ibiza loungy, chill, jazzy, backgroundy stuff, and as well as like East London jungle, and then but for actually culturally, from there, after going, like, I was in Europe for about 4 years. I was based in Vienna, and at the time was very much, well, still is, club-wise, like a little brother to Berlin, they say. So this is early 2000s, very minimal tech house type thing, and I was going to a lot of clubs at that point. So was kind of my deal. After that was a year in Latin America, which actually prior to that I was already sort of I was a resident at El Grotto, and Latin music had already appealed to me. And whilst it was Mexican themed, there was a lot of Brazilian staff there, and I'd met a lot of Brazilians in Europe who'd put me on to Brazilian music, and it really appealed to me. But to have a sort of a purpose to sort of aspire to collect more Latin music at the time. So I'd already been playing at El Grotto for a couple of years before I went for my year in Latin America. And so, it was really immersed in, I unfortunately never made it to Brazil. I figured it deserved a second trip, like its own trip, being a completely different language, to the rest of Latin America. But as far as Colombia and Mexico, for salsas, I went to like the World Salsa Championship in Colombia, the south of Colombia, and just to see these from like 6-year-old kids right through to like 50-year-olds, doing this incredible dance, and just even waiting for ferries at 7 a.m. in the morning, and everyone just break out into a dance, and it's total festive spirit, and you can't help but be like, wow, immersed in this. And as I said, I was always consider myself a dancer, and as soon as I got to Latin America, I was like on the sideline. Get out of here, gringo! Like, I don't know what you're doing. It's like, you're right there. So, but no, for sure, every time now I leave the country, I try to focus in on wherever I'm going. And now that records is such a big piece for me, it's every time I go on a trip, it's like this exciting thing. It's like, okay, what kind of records can I expect to be buying, and what does this country specialize in? And I think there's a lot of research you can take. I go back through and I see like, what sort of pressing plants which country had in what decades, and what's going to be in abundance and what's going to be readily available and cheap. And, I think it's like trying to, you should try and eat what's available in a country, if you are going to Asia, you don't seek to eat pasta and burgers, you try to eat what the locals eat, or however you want to say it, but try and shop the right market, so I always take that into consideration when going to a new country, and try and immerse myself in local music. And at this point in time, there's always a modern translation for these things. And I think, a lot of music can fit on a dance floor. And, there's no better feeling than hearing a new style of music and just being like, what is this? This is amazing. Like, what are these instruments? Like, as you said, the fascination with Brazilian music, I think they have an extreme amount of their own instruments, compared to other countries, the ganzo and the berimbau, and they have their own noises. You hear Brazilian music and you just hear noises that you don't hear in other music, and you go, okay, this is Brazilian. Like a samba drum pattern. Like they have their own sound. It's incredible. I mean, it's just such a melting pot of a country. Geography and historically speaking, a lot of it's made up of a lot of nationalities and a lot of sounds and flavors, and what they did for jazz, they changed the course of jazz essentially, as a country, which not many countries outside of the United States can say that, and it's fascinating country in every term, but in music, I think they're up there at probably musically one of my favorite countries. So for sure on the list of countries to visit with a big intention to buy a lot of records. But
the 20 million Brazilian fans that we have that listen to the show, I'll be very happy with that, mate. So I think you're going to receive an honorary visa and an invitation for Carnival. So I can see The
Okay, I
Ningaloo
can't wait.
Records tour happening, mate.
I can't wait. I look forward to it.
I love what you said about when you're in the local market, you do as the Romans do, and don't go to an Italian restaurant and have chicken nuggets and chips, even though there's
Yeah,
some people that do that.
yeah.
Around the world, where you've gone to record stores and been digging the crates, what have been some of those bits of gold that you've struck on that have really resonated with you?
I mean, yeah, going back to Colombia just then, buying like Discos Fuentes compilations in the street in Colombia for 30 cents a piece kind of thing, and carrying them around for the next 6 months. I was in New York last year, which is obviously a mecca for disco and house, with so many roots there and just incredible record shopping and options. Europe, of course, as well. My partner being French Canadian, every time we go to Montreal, they were one of the second biggest record pressing cities in the world during, like, in the late 70s, early 80s. So there's a lot of high energy disco, Italo disco, Unidisc, Gino Socchio. A lot of this sound comes out of Montreal. So also an incredible city for record shopping. I'm going to Paris next month. So there, again, another incredible city for record shopping. Last time I was there, I wasn't quite as serious into records as I am now. I think I brought home, a handful of 7 inches. I think this time it'll be substantial boxes shipped home.
Shipping container in Freo.
Maybe not a container, but at least a crate. At least a box. I used to try and carry everything around, and try, but I've got to the point now where I can justify the money to make it easier on myself. It's not worth carrying 30 kilos of records, through multiple cities anymore. I'm just like, okay, if I really want these, it's not worth my back.
There is a subset of listeners who, people don't understand that with DJing, there is the digital mixing, but there is that distinction with vinyl mixing, and it's something that you're very much an advocate of. Well, you do both, but the vinyl mixing is an area that, as I've started with digital mixing, I don't even feel like a DJ until you see people who actually do vinyl. That's, to me, what real DJs do. It's so challenging. So just tell us about that aspect of vinyl mixing and what it's all about.
Yeah, look, it's kind of a tricky one. People, people come to me and say, "Oh, what do you think of digital?" And like, "Oh, is it even real thing?" I think the crux of DJing is reading a room and providing a fun atmosphere and trying to raise the atmosphere or do control the atmosphere with music, essentially. So I'm not a purist by any means. For me, I found it far more tangible to play with records and collect records, and it struck my interest. Digital serves its purpose, and there's a tremendous interview with Theo Parrish, a DJ producer from Detroit, who talks about the concept of replacing artistry with convenience. And I think he mentions, if you're pushing your artistry, whether it be digitally, if you're doing things that you can't do with records, if you're live remixing, doing crazy loops, if you're pushing that artistry not just from a point of convenience, but from a point of having extra tools and utilizing those tools to do it in a way that can't be done, it's like one thing. But just to do it because it's easier, or just trying to make it, And I'm not sure if I'm conveying it right. I'm happy to play digital, but it doesn't do anything for me. It serves its purpose. And every now and then I'll wish, in a vinyl set, if I had that with me, I think that could have worked better. But sometimes I think, well, again, for me, having those constraints of I only have those records there, I need to make those work tonight to this crowd, I think is an extra challenge, you know, and it makes the DJ work harder and think better, think things through further. You know, you're trying to set up tracks 3 and 4 tracks in advance. You know, I think a lot of music sits better in sort of in context amongst other tracks. You know, you can really work up to a track, and you know, if you see a record in your bag, like, oh, I want to play that, but we're not there. How am I going to get there? Which records can I use to get to that record? You know, and again, you can say the same thing for digital, but it's you've got 10,000 songs at your fingertips. I think it's a lot easier. And look, I'm happy to do it in scenarios, but it doesn't excite me. It doesn't give me pleasure. I don't come home and look at my USBs like, wow, cool. Wow, look at this thing, cool. You know, whereas records for me, you know, I just come home and go through them, you know, and pull out things that, you know, I feel like more is kind of left to chance, you know, like, you know, sometimes you just buy things on a whim, or, you know, you're gifted things, and, you know, they have sort of, you know, if you want to say they have stories or whatever, but they have visual cues, and I think they just ask more from you, but give more back, you know. I think I find it more rewarding, you know. It's harder, you know, and it's not just a wank thing like, oh, it takes more skill or whatever. I think whatever format helps you be a better DJ, then go with that. And for me, it was vinyl, you know. That was like, okay. I remember seeing, you know, a vinyl DJ for the first time, which was like, what? This is it, man. Like, that's what I've been looking for, you know. I think even, you know, genre-wise, you know, like production notes and things you start to recognize from records. You know, I can look at records and just know, you know, through production notes, extra, you know, you just read through the instrumentation, you know, the city and the like the time frame, you know, that it was made in, just one like small cue, like one small reference to another producer, or, you know, the bonus percussion, you know, extra conga track, or it's got like a sex mix on there, or a erotic dub or something. You're like, okay, this is there's going to be something good on this record, I think, you know. Or if it's like, you know, 92 New York or something, I'm like, okay, this is worth my time, you know. But then as soon as we get to like, you know, 2001 or something, I'm like, okay, we'll leave that. But if it's 2001 out of Leipzig, then I'm like, okay, I'll listen to that, you know. I think you learn more just from those notes, those production notes. You just get more information, more to hold, more to look at, more to work with, you know. So again, that's what I found pushed my DJing was records, essentially. So
yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that Theo Parrish thought as well. I never thought it that way myself, and I really want to know, who was that vinyl DJ you saw for the first time that made you change?
There was quite a lot in Vienna at the time. There was a guy called Chez Monsieur, and he played all this like essentially folk and traditional country, you know, music of the world. I don't like to say world music, but music, you know, outer national music. So he wasn't necessarily like the tech house guy I was looking for, but just pulling out like the most obscure of obscure records and like making them work. And I was just like, where did he get these? Like, what? You know, like the effort he must have gone to. And then he was like a real, you know, top hat and suspender type, you know, like he had this real, he was very dapper, you know, and he'd come up there and go through his crate of like little, like 45s and, you know, put these crackly old records on, and just, I was like, and then seeing him leave the club, you know, because he never stayed very long, he'd just do his thing and see himself out, sort of, and see him cut all his records out. I was like, wow, he's put a lot of time and effort into this. Like, that's crazy. But And then, you know, moving forward, you know, like my DJ hero is Mr. Scruff. I've probably told most people that, but and he's, you know, one of the largest record collections in the UK, and that's saying a lot. There's a lot of big record collections in the UK. But just the way, you know, he would just do these insane mixes. You're not even sure what song is, you know, which song is finished and what started, and he would use all guitar pedals for delays and just like, you know, you think you've heard a song and then you hear someone like that mix it, you know, just keep the mix in for minutes and, you know, start the mix again while it's still mixing, you know, like you just, how is this still just record, you know? Like live remixes with records, you know, and delay pedals and stuff. And then coming back to Perth, like I just ran into Ben Taff, just started seeing Ben Taff everywhere. I was like, this guy's incredible, you know. Like, so it was, I think it's really important to have that on a local scale as well. And also just a great sort of local figurehead for dance music. And, you know, I started pestering him as soon as I got home, like, what turntable should I buy? Like, can you give me gigs? Blah, blah, blah. You know, like, he was always very patient, always had answers for me and stuff like that. And in hindsight, I know what an insanely busy guy he was, you know. So he's got kids riding him, like, you know, I wasn't even the kid at the time, but, you know, budding young DJs trying to find their way. And he always made time to reply to my messages and stuff like that, or have a chat in person and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that's really important. It's something I try to do now, just because it was something that was afforded to me when I had no idea what I was doing, and I think that's important and part of, you know, the DJ thing. I think you should be an approachable part of a party. You know, I think I'm seeing it more and more, which is great. You know, people are openly, you know, market themselves as not just a promoter, but as someone to come and talk to, as, you know, if you have an issue or whether you just want to discuss what's happening. And I think that's a great step forward in party spaces, and something that wasn't there, you know, 15 years ago or something, or not at parties I was at. It was always like, you know, promoters were just backstage or in the VIP area or something. And like everything, you know, you take the bits you like from your experiences, and when you start doing it, you try to implement those into your process. And yeah, I think it's important, and, you know, gives back when you're a vocal point of a party, and, you know, you engage with people, and, you know, especially early, like with events that I do, you know, I've got, if I'm sharing with another DJ or something, I'll always take time to come around the dance floor, and I think that's really makes people feel like they're not just welcome, but engaged and part of the party. And because, again, as I said to you, like, you can't have parties without people. You know, people make parties. You know, you can have you know, the best sound system, incredible space, and everything. But if people aren't comfortable and, you know, the energy's not right, then, you know, you're not going to get a good party. Essentially, you're not going to create any sort of atmosphere. And, you know, I think it all stems up from the ground. You know, like the early time in the early hours of a party, you know, when people rock up, it's a bit weird. And, you know, I think I always try and tell people to try and come early and familiarize yourself with the space, you know. And, you know, when you walk into a really crowded nightclub or party or something, and you try and find your way to the front, and you're like, oh, there's lots of people and no one's really moving for you or something. And you're like, oh, it's hard to feel comfortable. But if you're there from the start, I'm not suggesting everyone has to spend 8 hours on the dance floor or something, you know, but if you've been there when the space is empty and a bit lighter, you know, you familiarize yourself and you become comfortable in the space. And then as it fills up, you feel like you can always come back to that space because you were there before, you're familiar with it, you know. Again, I think that's important for parties to, you know, try and go early. You know, I know it's a bit of a drag sometimes for people, but yeah, I really think, you know, if you're listening to this and you think, you know, I don't want to go until it gets good, go to the party, make it good, go to the space, meet the people, you know, be be a part of the party, make the party good. You know?
It gives you that psychological disco safety in a way.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I know this space. I was here when it wasn't, dark with lasers and really loud. I was here when it was approachable, and and essentially, venues need your support. Yeah, the way I do it, I try to keep parties free and try to make them, accessible, and try to involve the venue as well, and not just be like come in and sort of, boss my way around sort of thing. I think it's important to have communication with the venues, and for the venues to be on board. It's got to be a team effort. You've got to chat with staff and communicate, and for parties to run well. It's all well and good to have the rockstar DJ come through, and play the set, but I think the venue's got to be on board, and the staff have got to be on board as well. Want it to be a good night. That's when the best parties happen. I think when the staff are loving it as well, and the energy's good, and service is smooth, and everyone's happy, and it's like wow.
I got to say, man, because when I see your name on a party now, I know it's going to be a party worth going to, which I think is a massive compliment to what you've been doing.
Yeah, thanks.
You've really added to the Fremantle Walyalup scene, because I just feel over the last 10 years the brands, if I can use that term, that you've created, like Plantasia or the different types of parties that you do. I'd love to know how you've thought about creating those. Have they been deliberate, or are they just organic, and how they've evolved? Yeah,
thanks. Means a lot, because we do try, and I say we shout out Mr. Daniel Dalton, who I do a lot of events with. But I think that sort of brand trust and familiarity, that trust you put in, that's essentially what I'm working with. Is trust that people have. You're going, Saturday night or Sunday night, whatever. Everyone's time is important to them. Especially as you get, as you near 30, it's like, 60. I can't, I can't go to every party. You have to be selective. And you've got to trust what's going to be provided there. And every time I put something on, I think you put that on the line a little bit, So it's, for me, it's always been really important to be really careful with people's trust, and try not to just, willy-nilly throw too many parties and not in spaces that I can't see working, or just, trying to hustle too hard, or, not putting on parties or events in spaces that I don't believe can work, and it's, I'm especially proud that it's happening in Fremantle. I think it was good timing. A good friend of mine was putting on the Club Med parties a few years back, and it was really, for our age group, I felt like the first consistent parties in Fremantle since I'd lived there. Outside of and when I say parties, I know there's always been clubs and bars and things, but I mean that sort of community party for underground dance music that you can trust. Again, trust the name. It's going to be good, and you're going to see people or at least like-minded people that are going to be on the dance floor, not because they're out to be drunk, but because they want to go dancing. And so when Club Med took a break, I didn't want to take a break. I was DJing a few of those events, and I was like, this is, I see this can continue going, and I really want it to keep going. So obviously, as I mentioned before, it obviously started with several empty dance floors, but as like a snowball down the hill, it's I always said every gig leads to another gig, and I still believe that every gig I do, leads to more people coming to the next party. There's always someone on the dance floor for the first time with you, I think. I think that's important to keep in mind, again, in maintaining people's trust or earning their trust as far as wanting to spend their time and money with you, because, there's hundreds of bars and, I'm not going to say hundreds of dance parties every night in Perth. It's obviously a smaller pool than that, but, there can be 10 worthwhile things on a Saturday night in Perth, that you can spend your time and money on, and so, yeah, I think having people's trust with planning their weekend around your party, whatever it may be, I think that's really important. As for the different arms and legs, the different parties, it has all been pretty organic, I think. I've always liked things to be sort of themed, and I really like, people ask me how I come up with it, but I kind of look in the space a bit, or musically, like where I think it's headed. And Plantasia was obvious with the plants, and it's kind of a greenhouse sort of space.
Yeah, so cool.
And yeah, it's I'm really happy with that. Well, essentially, we needed a roof. We started like the first summer at the Federal, and it was great, but it was like, man, it's done. It comes around to this time of year, May, and it was like it's getting very iffy, So I was like, we need a roof, man, So Freo Social just opened and started working with them, and it's obviously better weeks and some incredible weeks, but it's been a very consistent party for us for Sunday night. I think our parties were born out of Sunday nights. In a very good. I think Sunday night is kind of proves who either you work in hospitality and it's your Friday, and if you're hospo, you know how bars work. You're there for fun. You're well behaved. You're respectful. Like our hospo. Shout out Fremantle hospo. They're a group of legends, and yeah, really sort of kickstarted the brand, I would say, as far as Sunday night parties, and then from there it was like, okay, we could probably do something outside of Sunday. A lot of people were like, I work on Monday. Oh, me too. I get that. So yeah, and hard jazz was like kind of a risk. Such a, when I put it to the venue and to Dan, they were both like, wow, it seems pretty limited, man. Like, don't, is this just one party? I said, no, it's going to be, you've got to open that umbrella of jazz. What is jazz? What is jazzy? If it's jazzy, we'll play it, And the first couple were like pretty stressful trying to play what we thought, there was definitely a couple of chin strokers in the room. A bit like, is this jazz still, and I think once we got through that storm and sort of solidified, the theme and what hard jazz was to us, now I think it's I'm really probably most proud of that party, just because of, people's openness to music, and I would really say it's our best crowd, that, there's a lot of musicians there as well, and people who know music and, who are listening to different parts of songs, and, can hear, just crazy yahoos for a flute solo or whatever. I'm always joking about the flute solos, but it's, you can tell when you're playing to people who are really listening, not just waiting for another kick drum to drop, actually listening to songs and going, wow, yeah. So, yeah, it's really incredible to see that work and to see people's enthusiasm for, like, I guess, sort of a niche party. But, yeah, I just sort of, I tinker away. Again, sort of with, records makes this really easy. You're looking at pictures and inspirations and, again, details of music, and it makes it easier to come up with things, or at least to steal ideas, or just to base ideas off of albums and things. It's an endless source, and there's always a new idea, and whenever a new venue presents itself, wanting to do, if it's a space that I think can work, then I try to curate an idea for that space, I think. So
the Hard Jazz vibe is amazing, and as a Dockers fan, with the purple, you've got the disco balls, you've got this purple haze in the sky, and you've transformed the back of the Clancy's Fish Pub into this incredible out of world dance floor.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. There's just one more party or event, I could say. See, I'm someone who likes a bike, but I'm still on my training wheels, and you're someone who can ride your bike but still be playing at the same time and have hordes of cyclists behind you and go on some awesome trails. Tell us about how the parties that you do, whether you're on your wheels, evolved and started.
Yeah, the bike DJ bike. I don't know what to call it. There's some lovely gents at a brand called South Beach Aperitivo, which is a locally brewed aperitif type. Not going to say the word famous orange drink, but this is a pink version of that. Born in Fremantle, and they reached out to me a few years ago now. Were like, we should collab on something. It's the first time I DM for collab. It's kind of cool. I was like, we could do something out. I liked their branding and stuff, and we went back and forth with a few ideas, and eventually one of those guys, sent me the Dom Whiting, who's the original sort of DJ bike guy in the UK, as a drum and bass guy, and I'd already seen it. I was like, of course, that's what we do. Yeah, perfect. Why didn't I think of that? So from there we started brainstorming and trying to, there's a lot of Reddit threads about how he does it and how it works, and went down the research rabbit hole. But essentially, they sort of facilitated the bike, and the original one, I worked on and did the modifications to make sure everything was going to stay on the bike. And so I did that bike. We did one, and it was great success, and it was this really cool thing. And then the bike got stolen, actually. It was just it was kind of left in a courtyard. I'm gonna defend myself. I had nothing to do with it. I was running the after party, but it was locked in a courtyard, but not locked in the courtyard, if that makes sense. Anyway, so sadly that bike was gone. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because the guys went, okay, we'll go back and build the 2.0. And the new bike was an e-bike, and they had it more professionally custom built. And so we did a run of three different bike parties this year, Fremantle, Leaderville, and on Walyalup, which is probably most people's favourite. So essentially it's just, ride along, playing music, and people follow along. There's this crazy brand of speakers. They're a Scandinavian brand. They're high performance. They take an XLR. They're coined as the first sort of battery performance speaker, and you can link them up wirelessly. So on Rottnest, for example, we had 6 of those, and linked them all up, and we had 2 on my bike, and then another 2 bikes with 2 speakers each. And so essentially people just follow the sound of the music around. And it's been a really nice concept. As far as logistically, that's a lot of people's questions, like, how do you ride and DJ? But coming from vinyl mixing, like mixing on the controllers, like, very easy. And I'm not doing any sort of mind-blowingly complicated mixes.
On vinyl while on a bike.
I'm keeping it pretty straightforward, just sort of focusing on the selections there. But it's been really nice. It's been a really cool concept to work with, and they've been great to work with. And people have got a real kick out of it. And there's a few moments there where people said to me like that song with that landscape, and just was like, amazing. So it was a very cool concept. I think we've put it to rest for a little while. I think 3 was probably enough for the summer. We'll see where we're at next summer. See if there's a demand for it. But definitely a cool concept. But I was very happy to be DJing.
Maybe one up in Exmouth, because you got the Ningaloo Records name, which I want to ask you about. It's a fantastic name and brand, but tell us about that connection.
Essentially, originally I wanted to come up with a brand, I wanted to do a label thing. I wanted to do all these things at once. I was doing a lot of carpentry for vinyl. Essentially, I still do a little bit, but less so. But initially I was doing record crates, 7-inch carry boxes, turntable housings, like anything I could make out of wood for records, So I wanted a brand for this, and I was like, eventually I'm going to release DJ edits and these sort of things. So I'll get a head start with it as a label, a label brand, a figurehead, whatever you want to call it. And so, I really wanted to scream Western Australia. And so previously, I think I mentioned already, I worked as a scuba diving instructor, and I still currently work as a boat builder during the week. I'm a shipwright. So a lot of marine construction, everything's on boats. The actual Aboriginal definition for Ningaloo is a prominent land over deep water. So the meaning for me I've adapted is the deep water aspect. And so deep water, deep crates, deep roots, deep music, a deeper connection to music. And so this sort of compiled all of those aspects for me. The seaside living, it screams Western Australia, but not to everyone, and once people, what is that? I have friends overseas. Oh, what does it mean? I'm like, Google it, I'm like, it's a reef. Yeah, it's cool. Nice. Once I decided, I was going to settle here in Fremantle and live, there was a time where I didn't think I would live here. So when I made that decision, I wanted my music brand to represent where we live. And then, just tied in with all my nautical aspects, I guess. So, there's been a lot of emails and message queries about when's the Exmouth gigs going to happen. And I say to them, whenever you want to do it, But, I actually went a few years ago, and I don't know if I'm ready to drive straight back up there, but I'm sure there's something in the works not far away. So,
well, mate, after this podcast, you've got the Rio tour, you got the Ningaloo tour. There's I got to ask you, as someone who does a lot of events, and I'm sure you're getting a lot of asks and DMs for collabs. How do you balance it out? And I'm sure saying no comes at a point as well, and just how you think through all of those types of asks that you have now as Ningaloo Records.
Yeah, it's funny. It was never something that ever dawned on me that I would ever say no to anything. That's also advice for young DJs, is like, say yes to everything. I think, there's a couple of ways to look at it. If you want your cool branding and you want to do your occasional club set or whatever, but if you want to become a good versatile DJ lots. And then, if something does come of it, then you can be more selective, which is what worked for me. But now I'm a bit more selective again, purely because of this trust thing I was talking about, like the punter trust, the guests at the parties, of course there's been scenarios where I've thought, something could work and it hasn't worked quite as I'd imagined, and then, people rock up and I'm like, shit, this is not a good space. I'm really sorry, this sucks. You should go. I'll be honest with you. This is not going well. You should, I appreciate you coming, but go find something else. I can recommend this and this tonight over this, but but again, so yeah, it has become a bit of a balance, you know, choosing the right things per se. But you know, I think if people's, you know, whether I'm dealing with a venue directly or a promoter or something, I think if people, you know, if their hearts are in the right place musically, you know, and they know what they're asking for, you know, when people just come through like, oh, you're popular, come and play this. I'm like, you know, like, that's not me at all, you know. You obviously don't know what I'm doing here or what I'm trying to do, or, you know, and I think that goes for all, you know, if it feels right for you in any facet of life, you know, if it feels right, it probably is right, you know. And there's going to be mistakes, but yeah, it's a weird feeling to actually say no to things and then people ask again. I was like, wow, okay. And, you know, and when people ask again, I look at it sort of differently again. I'm like, okay, you're keen? You're really keen? You know? So, yeah, I think you've just got to decipher those things.
I'm really interested, having, you know, played a few parties over the last couple of years that I've been doing this, and I know you as an expert, I just really wanted to understand the emotional side of being a DJ. And the few people I've spoken to, some are extremely nervous at the beginning or even during, or, you know, afterwards you're exhausted. How have you evolved in your emotional capabilities and what you feel as a DJ before, during, and after sets?
Oh, it's weird sometimes. I still feel weird, you know, like there's still nervousy feelings at times. And, you know, it depends on the spec, you know, depends on what's going on in the room. Or I think when there's nothing going on is when I feel most at ease, you know, when things lift organically, you know, when I've got time to warm up. I'm not very good at the, like, busy party. This is your, like, 1 hour to come in and, like, you know, play, you know, make it banging, you know. Like, that's weird for me, you know. It always takes me a while to get my ears around the sound in the booth and stuff, you know. Yeah, that's why I try to play long sets, because, you know, I've had time to warm up and, like, you know, I get comfortable in the space. But, you know, sometimes it's so easy. Like, you just walk in and everyone's just so full of joy and, like, happy to see you and, you know, applauding everything you're doing. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah, sweet. You know, and you feed off of that. Then other times, yeah, you can be thrown really easily. And, I still see, you know, people I consider, you know, much better DJs than me get thrown because it's quite easy for it to happen, you know. When all you've got to think about is, like, the next track you're going to play. Sometimes you don't even have to think, you know. It's, like, so easy. It's, like, so organic, you know. It's sometimes the songs just choose themselves, you know. It's like, you know, and I find that, again, doubling back on records, you know, you go through the bag and whatever's there is there, and it's like, okay, this is the moment for that song. If not now, then, you know, like, I'm not going to get back here, so play this track now, you know. And again, you know, when that's all flowing and it feels easy, and, you know, that's why I always, again, with Dan, when we set up our parties, we go to, like, you know, we take the time and we do everything right, you know, what we consider right as far as cables and spacing and workspace flow. And when all that works really well and all you've got to do is play music, you know, when everything works and the space works and the extra little touches make the party a bit more special, and all you've got to do is just, yeah, I can actually be really relaxed and have, you know, the most fun ever, which is, you know, kind of the hope for every party, right? So, yeah, I think, you know, like with everything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, and hopefully the more fun you can have and the more risks you can take. But yeah, there's always going to be mistakes and people who aren't, you know, music's so, you know, it's an opinion, you know. There's obviously good and better music, you know, but at the end of the day, everyone's entitled to what they think sounds good. And so, you know, for you to come up and say, this is what I think sounds good, like, you know, it's kind of a weird thing because everyone's entitled to say this is not good. Well, fair play to you. Like that's that's your opinion. That's cool. Everyone else is enjoying it, and there's always going to be those people who aren't feeling it. And I say to them like, tonight's probably not for you, and that's fine. So it's just trying to look past the people who aren't enjoying it and try to find the ones who are. Again, I think there's always one. Every gig, even the worst ones I've had, there's always been one person who's come up at the end and been like, I really enjoyed that, thank you. And even if it's 1 out of 200, it's like, okay, I'll take that. I'll see you at the next gig.
Yeah, it's amazing how it makes you feel. Hey, that you just hold on to that one. Like,
yeah. It only takes one. So I recommend anyone listening to this, if you've enjoyed a DJ set, you should go and tell them. Or a musician or a podcaster or anything, let them know you enjoyed it, even if it's anonymously or however you want to do it, just let them know they're fighting the good fight and they should keep doing what they're doing, Had a few pivotal moments like that where it was like, okay, I'm on the right track, even if tonight didn't feel like it, got to keep going forwards.
Well, Josh, tonight definitely felt like it. This has been such a joy. I'm so thrilled that you got to come and speak about your craft with me and the listener. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Anything you'd like to promote? I know we've talked about a few things, but the floor is yours.
Oh, man. I mean, I think Instagram being the powerful tool that it is, I think that does enough promoting of specific gigs. But if you're enjoying music and it feels like something you want to pursue, then I recommend it. And if you're enjoying someone else's music, let them know you've enjoyed it. And also, if anyone, again, if it's not clear, I'm very open to conversations with people about music and pursuing DJing, and feel free to reach out. Again, it's part of a community thing, and it was a luxury that was afforded to me, and I'm very happy to afford that to anyone who wants any advices or, as far as record collecting or DJing or doing anything. So reach out and do the things you like, do the things that bring you joy, and they'll probably reward you back.
Thank you so much, Josh. Ningaloo Records. No problems. Yeah, one day the dream is we can do a party together or be on the same lineup. That'll be amazing. But mate, cheers.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. I'd love to talk about that, mate. You please reach out.
And there we have it. That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for listening. As a community cultivated, independent podcast, your support means the world, so we can keep these important conversations flowing, taking Walyalup to the world and the world to Walyalup. Until next time, keep smiling, keep scoring.